Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our retro look back and retro review of Simon the Digital Game. So this is loosely based off the popular children's game Simon Says, and it's the history as well as the cultural significance behind this that really counts, and how the founder of this actually played a part in shaping the video game industry that we know today. But otherwise, this particular model that you see in front of you was actually the Japanese version first released in Japan back in the late 70s as well as late 80s, when we had a US version actually that was imported here. But this Japanese version, you can see, actually has all the characters as well as the buttons labeled in Japanese, so it's a bit harder to comprehend as well as to look at and play directly, but it still definitely works. And since it is extremely antiquated, a lot of these ports as well as the sides have since been discolored, and I had to kind of clean this off just to get it to this particular state. This is essentially a memory-based game, so it's not overly complicated, but it does keep you entertained. It does even allow for adults to be challenged, and the actual sides here will illuminate, and you have to follow a pattern after it stops to then memorize the sequence and then tap it out. So of course there are versions now catered specifically to apps you might have on the iOS or Android App Store that does the same thing. But again, this piece of kit really was a significant kind of cultural and historical piece in video game history. So taking a closer look at the design of this game first, you can see the centerpiece includes all the controls, which allows you to turn the unit on or off. There are settings for the difficulty, and there's also a dedicated power switch on the bottom here at the start to reset the game, and then for multiplayer modes. So these controls here are pretty tactile and responsive, but again, you can see how all the characters are printed in Japanese, and this was at least a brushed aluminum faceplate. The keys here, plastic, are pretty tactile and responsive. Again, you use this to interact with the game. Otherwise, the main frame of the unit was made entirely out of plastic, and the back is where you inserted 3, in fact, of these 9-watt batteries, which did take a bit of juice to operate. Unfortunately, it's a little expensive if you continuously swap out these batteries. Luckily, they lasted you for about a year and a half before you need to change them out if you did continuously play this. Again, this version here was indeed made in Japan. There was a loud mono speaker on the back for sound effects, and you can see some of the company sponsors and be sponsored by video game companies when they first kind of rolled this out onto the market. Some additional historical background on the Simon, which was released in 1978. Its slogan was, "Simon's a computer, Simon has a brain. You either do what Simon says or else go down the drain." And as far as the history behind it, again, here is a page that I quickly pulled up from Wiki, and you can see that the computer software programming on this was by Lenny Cope, and the original version manufactured by Milton Bradley, and much of the assembly language which was used for the basic game on here, it was designed by Dr. Charles Capps, and who taught computer science at Temple University and also wrote one of the first books on the theory of computer programming. And so it was launched in 1978 and was quite a success. It came in pop culture in the late 70s as well as 80s in many forms, such as some Stephen King novels, where it had a minor role along with some other talk shows and episodes. And it's because that the Simon has had such a profound role in this very early age of computer gaming as well as in programming and in pop culture that it's been very well documented. So for instance, there are even articles online about how each of the individual keys have different notes. For instance, E notes, C sharp, A, and E, an octave lower for whenever you tap onto the individual buttons. Otherwise, in terms of a bit more about the history behind this, in terms of the chipset, the original prototype actually had a Texas Instruments TMS 1000 microprocessor on it, which was very low cost back then, and of course it later evolved, and when it first came out in 1978, it cost $24.95, which is about $91 in 2015-2016 standards. So it was fairly expensive, but it was still a top-selling toy during that Christmas season, and it was later licensed by Hasbro, and they released more and more versions down the line that was based on the same idea and concept of the game, but of course modern technology evolves, and they can make the whole thing a bit more portable. So anyways, guys, this has been a quick video look back at the kind of interesting and historical Simon 1978 very early computer game, and you guys can check out more details in our Throwback article coming out soon, which will include a bit more of a demonstration. But for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.